I have been super stressed this week. In fact, I've probably had one of the most stressful weeks I've had in a long time. And I have done some stress eating. And it looks very different to how it used to look in my binging days when I had a really bad relationship with food. If you've clicked on this video, chances are you relate to the experience of turning to food when you feel stressed. And there's a good chance that you now feel stressed about the fact that you're somebody who turns to food when you feel stressed. So now your stress is just compounding itself. If we were to oversimplify the solution to this problem, it could look like, don't be stressed. Just find ways to get rid of your stress. Or it could be, even if you're stressed, because you can't escape stress, you just need to figure out how to stop yourself from eating when you feel like that. These are two extremes. It's like get rid of your stress, or just suck it up and don't eat when you feel stressed. And actually the solution is more likely to look like bringing these two things a bit closer together. So yes, we want to reduce or manage our stress, and we need to be able to learn how to cope with our stress in other ways that don't just involve food. When we pay attention to both sides of this, managing and reducing and coping, then we stand a much better chance of feeling like our stress just doesn't send us into a complete spiral when it comes to our eating. And don't forget that stress does impact the appetite biologically. Very acute stress tends to shut off the appetite. So if you're being attacked, or you're running away, or you're in a really acutely emotionally stressful situation, chances are your hunger will disappear. But in situations where the stress is a bit more mid-level, or it's kind of fluctuating, or it's chronic over a long period of time, some people still do lose their appetite. But I'm guessing if you're watching this video, you're like many of us on the other side, and our appetite increases as a way to try to deal with that level of stress. And when I'm talking about stress in this video, I'm simply referring to mental, emotional, and physical tension. So we don't need to demonize stress, but we do need to be able to recover from stressful periods. And the thing is, eating works. It can work really well at getting us out of that stressed state. And it does this in a few ways. Eating, as we know, stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part of the nervous system that calms us down. It's a signal of safety to the body, because the body knows, hey, we wouldn't be stopping and eating if there was immediate danger here. We would have to deal with the danger. So the fact we're eating means we must be safe enough to eat. Okay, we'll calm down. Eating can also work quite well for some people from a sensory perspective. So some people, when they're very stressed, they might reach for foods that have a lot of crunch, and there's something about the actual act of chewing the food that can be really calming from that sensory perspective. Food is also incredibly comforting. When we were babies and we cried, probably one of the first things our caregivers did was try to feed us. So it becomes associated with soothing, and we see it in young kids and older kids and probably adults as well. When somebody's upset, sometimes we offer them food as a solution. So this can kind of become an ingrained pattern culturally for us as well, to turn to food to just try to feel better when we don't feel good. And there's another one as well that doesn't get spoken about as much. And if you're somebody who has or is dieting, or you're trying to cut out certain foods and eat in a particular way, when you're trying to cut out certain foods, but you're experiencing a desire to eat these foods, you're now getting into a bit of a battle with yourself between, oh, I want to eat this food, but I think I shouldn't. And that internal battle causes tension, aka stress. So that battle goes on back and forth in your brain, and then maybe eventually you give in and you eat the food. Now, when you eat the food, you're not only receiving the pleasure of the food and the taste of the food, but you're also experiencing a release and a relief from the tension that was building up about having the food in the first place. If you're someone who knows what it's like to really battle with yourself around food, this is one to pay attention to, because when you have the food, the battle's over. So there is a whole change of state that happens when you finally just eat the food. And so then the brain codes that food as, oh, when I eat this ice cream, That felt so releasing and relieving from the tension that we were experiencing there, that in another situation, when there's tension, we're feeling tense, maybe the ice cream is the thing that we need to release the tension. What I'm saying is that food, having that food that you were battling with, the fact that you had it when you were battling with it means your brain associates it with relief. But originally, the only relief it was providing was the relief from the battle about the food itself. But now it becomes a solution to other problems. And then once that is coded in as a habit, in moments when you're feeling that tension, even if it's about a work situation, your brain might go, oh gosh, last time we felt so tense, we ate that thing over there and it made us feel better. And I do want to share with you what happened to me this week with this stress eating. And I'm also quite mindful of sharing it too, because I don't tend to talk about what I eat, because I don't think it's helpful from a comparative perspective. And people who follow my channel might be in all kinds of different places, mentally and emotionally with food. So I want to preface it with that. But I was incredibly stressed on Tuesday. I'd had a long day, a full-on day with clients. I've been back and forth with solicitors. I'm in the process of buying my own home. It's all happening this week. And my body is so full of this tension, this stress, and I don't know how to release it. I didn't know what to do with myself, and I ordered a Domino's. Nothing wrong with ordering Domino's pizza, but it was something I used to do during my binging days. I would order the pizza, I'd order the box of these 4 hot gooey cookies that they do, and ice cream as well, and I would binge on the lot. So for me to order Domino's in as stressed a state as I was felt a little bit uncomfortable. So I order a small pizza from Domino's, and I order the cookies that they used to only do in boxes of 4 and now come in boxes of 2, and I ordered 2 cookies as well. And I sat down to eat my Domino's, and halfway through my pizza I thought, I've had enough. I feel full. And this is the bit I'm cautious about telling you, because it can sound a little bit like, oh, get me, only eating half a small pizza. I stopped eating the pizza. I genuinely felt full, but let's face it, you're never too full for cookies. So I had the 2 cookies, and do you know what? I felt really soothed. And it turned out on Tuesday night, Domino's actually did have the answer. Now you might be thinking, Sarah, this is supposed to be a video about how to stop eating when you're stressed. Why are you telling us that you're eating when you're stressed? Food can absolutely be a tool when you are stressed. I really enjoyed the Domino's. I was connected to my eating experience. I was connected to my fullness signals as well. I was not trying to numb myself, and I was not trying to escape. When I did those things, that's when stress eating really became a problem for me. It's been a very stressful week, and there was just one moment where my brain was like, actually, tonight it's Domino's. Domino's is what we're going to do. And I felt satisfied. I felt satisfied because I was also hungry, and I did genuinely need to eat something, and I just didn't have the bandwidth to prepare food, and there was nothing in the house that was appealing to me. So when I put all these things together, reaching for the Domino's made sense. But I want to share with you a few things for you to think about and for you to consider or even try out if you feel like stress eating it's just happening too often and it's a problem in your life. The first one to consider is, are you over controlling food? By which I mean, if you're setting yourself up for certain expectations about how you should eat, that can become a stressor in and of itself. It can set you up for battling with food. If you are over controlling food, maybe you're not paying attention to your hunger, and hunger increases the production of cortisol and adrenaline, also associated with stress. We know we can feel stressed when we're hungry. Hunger is a stressor on the body, but if there's no emotional or psychological stress, and the physical stress of the hunger doesn't go unsated for a long period of time, hunger can be fine to experience. But if you get mentally and emotionally stressed about hunger, then it could be just with your psychology and where you are with food at the moment, you try not to let yourself get hungry. When it comes to over controlling food, that phrase is very subjective. What does over controlling food look like? I think that's for each individual to look at for themselves. Because I can't tell you what's restrictive for you, what's over controlling for you. I can give you my thoughts, but they're just my thoughts, and I don't know what's true in your experience. But one of the questions I would invite you to think about is, how much stress eating did you do before you started dieting or trying to control your food? If the answer was it was the same amount, then yeah, great. The stress eating itself, this bit might not apply to you as much, but if you notice that from when you started dieting or from when you started controlling your food, that's when you had more stress eating, there is a link there that might need to be looked at. The second one sounds overly basic, but it does need to be mentioned, and that is, are you meeting your basic needs? And this means ensuring that you are getting enough sleep, that you are paying attention to the relationships in your life, you are eating regularly and varied types of foods, and that you're moving your body if that's available to you. Now, if you're anything like me, I don't like to admit that I have these needs sometimes. I'm like, no, I should just be able to blast through on 5 hours sleep. Or relationships, sure, they're important. I care about people, but sometimes I'm a bit pathologically independent and I think I don't need anybody. Like, I should just be able to rely on myself. And if you've ever seen Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's basically that. Without our basic needs being met, we will be in a constant state of stress. And the third one, and this is where we get into the psychology, is about the art of letting go. How often are we stressing about things that are outside of our control? We get ourselves all worked up because we believe that if we don't get the outcome that we think should happen, it will be terrible, absolutely terrible if we don't get the outcome we want. Or maybe we believe that we won't cope if things don't work out the way we think they need to work out. Hopefully, I'm a week away from moving into my new home, but that could fall apart at any minute. The seller is currently threatening to pull out, and I've handed my notice in where I am now. So am I going to be homeless in a couple of weeks and having to figure that out? Maybe. But I do this thing, I say to myself, with something like that where it's beyond my control, if I don't get this place, it's going to be a massive inconvenience and there's going to be a lot to sort out. And I just say to myself, Sarah, you'll figure it out. That's for future you to figure out, and she will figure it out. Now, don't get me wrong. This doesn't make my stress vanish. This is what I was talking about at the beginning, but it brings it to a kind of manageable level. It brings me out of panic of going, so, okay, Sarah, you're not going to be on the streets. Yes, it might be quite stressful getting something else sorted about where you're going to live, but you will figure it out. You will figure it out because you have to figure it out. The other thing that really helps me psychologically is, even though I'm really stressed about making this big change, I remind myself that it is actually a real privilege to be able to buy my own home, and some people don't get that. So this is a simple acknowledgement and a little bit of gratitude. Now, this is not me, and this is where gratitude, I think, gets misused. We sometimes use gratitude, or think we're supposed to use gratitude, to minimize our feelings. So that would look like me going, Sarah, you should just be grateful that you can afford to buy your own place when lots of other people wouldn't. So just suck it up. Just stop getting worked up. You're wrong for feeling the way you feel because you should just feel grateful. I'm not talking about that. Again, this is the idea of stress management. When you introduce a little bit of acknowledgement for the things that you're grateful for or thankful for or appreciative for, you may still feel some stress, but it brings it down a couple of notches. And so we don't often think to necessarily do it because we think, well, if I can't feel grateful right now, what is the point in even trying to? But that pull in that other direction, that's like the opposite of stress, brings the stress levels down a bit. And the fourth point I want to make is about getting into the body. Stress, whilst is going on mentally and emotionally, all of that is happening inside our bodies. And how often for you when you're stressed are you up in your head? Because sometimes we don't want to go to the body, because if we pay attention to the body's feeling agitated, or maybe we notice that our heart's beating fast, or that our breathing feels a bit shallow. On Sunday evening, I went to get on my yoga mat, and I'd been distracted all day. And the minute I sat down on my yoga mat and I connected to my body, I just burst into tears because I realized how overwhelmed I was feeling. But it felt amazing. I completely surrendered to it. Just had a really good cry, and then that tension was released. And there've been a few nights tonight when I get into bed and I can feel like my body won't quite settle. My heart rate feels a little bit fast. And so what I do in those moments is I put all my attention in my heart rate. Like, I just breathe into it and I just accept what's happening in my body, And then most of the time, it starts to come down. And the times when it doesn't come down, I'm realizing, oh, I'm only doing this because I'm trying to make it come down, and I need to just accept it's going to do what it's going to do, and then it will come down. It's like a silly little mind game. Controlling the breath is so helpful at calming down these physical symptoms of stress. So another thing that I will do is counting my breath. So if I'm lying in bed and my head wants to get really busy and my body won't settle, I just count. When I breathe in, I count 1, and when I breathe out, I count 2. And then I just go up to 8, and then I start again. And it's really helpful because my brain has to do the counting. I'm focused on my breath. If I'm finding the breath is just not wanting to settle, sometimes I will hold my breath for a couple of seconds. So there's something called box breathing you might have heard of. I'm not a fan, because you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold for 4 seconds, you breathe out for 4 seconds, and then you hold for 4 seconds breathing out. And I find the holding sometimes just feels more stressful. So I will breathe in, hold for just a couple of seconds, and then breathe out slowly. When we are breathing out, our heart rate slows down. When we breathe in, our heart rate speeds up a bit. So the idea of holding the breath and trying to slow the exhale is really great physiologically at slowing your heart rate down, which creates a feeling of calmness. And again, with the breath thing, sometimes lying in bed, I'll say a word in my head. So I will breathe in, and as I exhale, I might just say in my head, letting go. And then breathe in, and as I exhale, just saying, letting go. It just helps to set that intention, and my body will start to listen. And the 5th thing I wanted to offer, and this one might sound a little bit strange, but I think it can make the world of difference just to how stressed you feel as you're navigating life. And that is simply, are you being authentic? Have you been in situations before whereby you're not being yourself, you're being and acting how you think other people think you're supposed to be and act? It feels exhausting, so you come away feeling really tired, and then you end up eating as a way to kind of decompress after that, from having to put this front up all the time. Now, there are going to be some situations where we have to act in certain ways, certain professional situations or something like that. But how often are you twisting yourself into a shape that you think other people want you to be? That is so stressful, because you can't just be. You're always scanning, you're always vigilant, you're always trying to respond in the way that you think you're supposed to respond. And if this is the way that you are navigating the world, the stress that you're feeling will constantly be compounded, because you're constantly worrying, are you getting it right? Did you say the wrong thing? Is this person thinking that? Is this person thinking this? When we feel like we're being ourselves, our whole physiology changes. We can just be. And the challenges of being able to do this could come from like past traumas. We could be talking big things. And that's okay. It might not feel safe to be yourself around other people at the moment. But are you yourself with yourself? By which I mean it's just being really honest with ourselves about how we might be feeling. And if you are constantly judging and berating yourself for how you feel or your reactions or how you're showing up in the world, this is where it starts. It starts from letting go of some of those judgments and having permission to just be you, even if you're just you with you. But the problem with many people that I work with is when it's just them with them, they're mentally beating up on themselves all the time. No wonder they're constantly stressed. A lot of the stress we feel is self-perpetuated. And when we recognize that and we can start to see our patterns and what we're doing, certainly if we can do it as an observer, we step back and we go like, oh yeah, I'm doing that thing. That's not making me feel good. Then we open up the possibility of being able to keep coming back to ourselves. Because do you know what? If you're somebody who you feel like you don't like yourself, I don't even think that that's true. I think if you don't like yourself, you just don't like who you think you are. And you don't like the fact that you feel like you're not who you think you're supposed to be. Not that you don't like yourself, just you don't even really know yourself. If you really did, you'd realize that there's nothing to not like. And most of the judgments we hold about ourselves are things that we've learned from other people of how we think we're supposed to be anyway. And as with any of this stuff, you don't have to do it all on your own. I've got groups and workshops and things that I'm running. If you're interested in coming and working with me, you can always look in the description below for how to do that. But Anyway, I hope this was helpful, and I will see you on the next video.